Hello, everyone. Welcome to Being Vulnerable. This is episode 9, and I am Carpal Tunnel, aka Chris, and I have a very special guest for y'all today. It's Jordan Coley. Introduce yourself to the
Yeah.
people.
Thank you so much for having me here, Chris. My name is Jordan, like you said. I am a musician, gamer, uh, goofy guy on the internet. I live in California in the Bay Area. And I've just been enjoying the Threads community where Chris and I have connected. So we're getting a chance to have a conversation. I'm just really excited.
Do you want to give a little bit of a background of how you got into music?
So I've kind of been in music all of my life. When I was growing up, my parents would used to tell me they would find me singing myself to sleep as a baby. So I've kind of just like always had music in me. It's a thing that's in my family, really mostly on my dad's side, a little bit on my mom's side also. But kind of just grew up knowing that I loved music, really from a very young age. Growing up, I was kind of discouraged from playing music though, um, and not necessarily for like doing it from a hobby. So I was encouraged to kind of like explore it and understand it and use it as a tool to learn, but not as something to pursue as a career or anything like that.
Yeah.
When I went away to college, I went to a school called Shenandoah University, which is in Winchester, Virginia. So it's like pretty far north in Virginia. Um, and it wasn't for music. It was actually for pharmacy. I wanted to become a pharmacist back then. So I got into their program. But the nice thing about Shenandoah, even though I wasn't in a music program, is it's a very well-known music school.
Yeah.
So they have like a conservatory, and I was surrounded by musicians the entire time. So the challenge was I tried to stay in my band while I moved out there,
Uh-huh.
and it didn't work out because
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh yeah, well you need to come to practice two times a week." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm poor and that's a long drive." So basically, I'm pretty sure, looking back at it, that the pretext was I wasn't really very good, and they were looking for a way to kind of get me to exit the group.
Oh,
And but the good news is, it was painful at the time, but also it spurred me to get better. So, it was one of those situations where I was like, oh man, that really sucks, but I'm going to show those guys. So I started a new band,
nice.
and I started to get better. So I, picked up guitar at that point. Um, I joined this website called like Band Mix or something like that and tried to find other musicians in the area because I didn't know anybody in that area. And I started a new band. We were slightly better, still pretty bad, but slightly better. And yeah, so that was kind of like the start of my journey. I played in bands all through my 20s. Um, Long story short, pharmacy school didn't happen. I ended up going to pharmacy school and hating it, and other things happened in my life that basically made me just kind of leave that whole thing. Went on this long, crazy journey that maybe we can talk about in detail because I'm like summarizing a lot because I'm an old man now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I stopped playing in bands, started playing solo, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. So,
And you're killing it. Like everyone talks so highly of you
ah,
on Threads. Like just even the people I've been talking to, because I talk to a lot of them regularly. They are so excited that they get to see me and you talk because we have a lot of similarities, I guess. And they must have known some of your story too.
yeah, that's wild. That uh, people have had such high things to say about me. That like I feel humbled by that. So that's really cool.
People talking behind your back, but it's at least good.
Yeah, hopefully it's good stuff, and they're not telling you how horribly unfunny I am. At least I said this earlier. At least I'm the one person that I've entertained, if nobody else. So I'm
That
at least having a good time.
that's actually the key to a lot of comedy writing. Is if you make yourself laugh, put the joke out there.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. If you can't make yourself laugh, then you're probably not gonna make anyone else laugh. Grew up as an athlete, and in Colorado. Ended up going to college for football, and then ended up hurting my shoulder and having to get surgery. Like I when I did that, I lost my scholarship,
Oh
and
man.
then I got surgery, and then I all I knew was sports, so I just kept trying, and I ended up trying out for a basketball team for at it was a junior college, Lamar Junior College, and I got on the team, and then so I got to play a year of college basketball till I retore my shoulder,
Oh,
and then I lost that sports. Like basically they were like you cannot really play sports anymore. They had to put screws on my shoulder just to hold it in, and they're like, yeah. So
dang.
so yeah, from that I went down a very I because that's all I knew was sports, so I didn't know I could do anything else, and I got very depressed and was doing things like doing anything to make me happy, alcohol, drugs, partying, and I ended up getting basically in the wrong crowd, which led me even down to harder drugs, and then I ended up becoming an addict for a while.
Mm,
Um, and then this is something I was going to bring up later, and this is something I haven't even told on this store or show, is my experience at I had a spiritual experience um while I because I had always been a poet, so I had
mhm,
always been writing poetry, and but I couldn't really share it with anybody because I all I did was write about love songs and my feelings, and that's nothing that an athlete can really showcase to people.
mm,
And there was not really a platform for me to do it like Threads, so I it was all just hidden from other people, and in those lowest moments when I was looking for what I could do, I was still writing, and then I was just like maybe I could put this poetry to music, and I picked up a guitar and started trying to learn it. And after like a couple months, and I didn't know that it took longer than months to learn guitar. So when I had picked it up and I was gonna put it down, and this is like at my lowest moment, like I was about to give up on life in general. Um, I
mm.
ha I had a spiritual experience where I got a message, and at this time too, I was delving into um the Bible a lot and just trying to find trying to find some sort of faith and hope that, that my life matters and all this stuff. And I through that I got this spiritual experience of and I know you have read the Bible in your in all that. So it I forget which story it is, but it's like when you're at the lowest and the darkest moment, how God will rise you up and then make you an example of what faith can be.
Hmm.
And that's what happened. My I come from a Santeria Catholic background for my Cuban side,
Okay.
but yeah, my grandparents were all Santeria priestesses, so they have this connection to the light that um so in that moment I felt it was my my grandmother. I just felt this light out of nowhere, and and she was just saying everything's gonna be okay. You just got to believe in yourself. Keep trying.
Mm.
And like I don't know if it was God speaking to me through um my grandmother's voice, because it was a voice that was comforting and like a voice like that.
Sure.
And I quit drugs that night. Haven't I actually been oh that was in 2016. I, I've been like 8 years sober off of that. But
Man, congrats. That's awesome.
I was able to quit a hard drug that you can't really quit. So like that aspect of it happening in one day, and like I was now a symbol of what faith could be, or like
That's
just
radical healing. That's a miracle. That's what
it
that is.
it was a miracle, and I didn't know that I had so much more to give to the world. I've been saved before in my past, like being shot at and like bullets stopping in my headrest when they should have killed
Mm,
me. And it's always been called divine intervention, but this was a moment of divine intervention that changed me. And it it's something that it's hard to talk about with some people because
sure,
they're gonna say that was the drugs that made you hallucinate. And it wasn't even hallucin. It was something inside that happened. It wasn't like I didn't see my aunt talk or my grandmother talking to me.
sure.
And then with people who are not religious, they think I'm preaching to them. So
Yeah.
it's been a hard thing to just like even express and film and well, I haven't even got to all that part yet. But so long story short, that happened and I believed in myself, picked up the guitar, started learning, and then I ended up enrolling back into college as a music student, trying to make myself as best as I could as songwriter because um, I was starting to finally get guitar down. And then through music school, I ended up getting my recording arts degree at a community college, so it was an associate's. Yeah,
Well, that all just sounds like God's orchestration to me. That all sounds like, and I can tell you this, like you were sharing about having that kind of like low moment where you felt like the a divine presence. I had an experience like that myself. There was a time in my life where things were pretty low, and I was about 23 years old. Um, I had basically gone through a lot of the stuff that I was talking about before, about kind of like I was navigating saying, "Hey, I'm in this pharmacy program. I'm trying to chase this safe career or whatever, and it's miserable." And I had not been doing well. I basically let myself get distracted by things like partying. So I got into that kind of stuff as well. And uh, it took its toll on me. So there was, I guess, my third year. I think it was my third year, my second year of pharmacy school. I had to retake a year, um, and it was humiliating because I had never. I was one of those like gifted kids or whatever growing up. So I never really learned how to study. So when I got into pharmacy school, it was completely foreign to me. It was hard, and I couldn't hack it. So I ended up having to repeat a year and navigate all of that. And I tried to like figure out how to navigate, starting relationships and friendships with the people who were under me that knew that I had like failed a year basically
yeah.
and was getting held back. And I had a really low, dark moment where some of like the most awful stuff ever happened to me. And it was up to that point. Some of the most
Yeah.
awful things had happened to me because there were more awful things to come. But we can talk about that later. But yeah, so I remember kind of getting back. I had been in Virginia for that whole time. And I got back to Maryland where I grew up. And I remember sitting on my bed in complete darkness and like literally sobbing into my pillow, screaming. And I heard a voice that said very softly, calmly, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." It was just literally scripture being spoken to me. When I was literally at my lowest moment where I thought, you know, I was at the verge of saying, "Hey, I'm gonna quit everything." Um, and it started to turn me around. I don't think that it completely transformed me. I won't say that it did because there was a long journey after that. But I still have that distinct memory of being at that lowest moment and like hearing a voice that wasn't from me tell me that it was going to be okay. So I can corroborate your story. It's real.
Uh, Paul McCartney had the same thing too happen to
Yeah.
him. He talks about that. I mean, there's a lot of people who have talked about getting that same type of message. Like Paul McCartney got the exact same words I got. Everything's gonna be okay. That's,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not words, it's like a feeling almost, but
Mm-hmm.
it's communicated to you. But
Right.
you hear words through this feeling, which is something I have never experienced before. So when that happened, I did realize like I was basically reassured that there is stuff out of my power, and what I could do in my power
Absolutely.
is to help others with
Yeah,
my story of being able to overcome addiction of, and find redemption from all of the bad stuff that I had done in my whole not being focused and not having any drive.
yeah,
and
absolutely.
and then when all that happened and I was trying to try to tell people this story, I haven't really been able to share it as much, so like it hasn't really affected anybody, but instead I've been a symbol of redemption from addiction,
Hmm.
and I haven't really had to tell the spiritual side that I had because people were still impacted by just me overcoming addiction and um, me becoming a musician and like returning my whole life around and stuff.
Right on. Well, I would just say this: hang on to that. Know that that testimony that you have is valuable and important. And if it hasn't come up yet, it will. There will come a time where that is absolutely useful for relating to someone, even if it's just like in a conversation like this.
Yeah,
And you never know who else has gone through some of the same experiences that you've had or that I've had. That just telling your story and seeing where you are today as opposed to where you were, um, what that impact can have on people. So that's how I think of it. And, I'm just doing my best, kind of like you are, just to be a light, to show, um, you know, what can happen if you just keep going,
yeah,
and what a difference you can make, even in just the little things, just by sharing joy, sharing a smile, being a positive
yeah.
influence in somebody's life. All of that.
Yeah, I also was given this message too because I was um I was doubting if I ever could deserve love and all this stuff because of all that stuff.
Mm,
Um, and the message was that, and this actually happened after when I was reading the Bible and all this stuff. I got a message of like the only way to love myself is if I love everybody. I can't have any hate in my heart. And like that really allowed me to release all of this like built up like hate for the people that put me in those situations and just, hate at the world for my circumstances and being
absolutely.
poor.
And
And
it's
like,
reflexive too, right? So it's the
yeah,
same if you think of it. The only way to love yourself is to love others. The only way to love others is to love yourself.
yeah, and it really did change the way I interacted with people, the way I even viewed other people. Like I now am very more altruistic within things. And like even with the meaning for suffering, because I still struggled too with my mental health. Like that's not the thing that just got fixed. My addiction got fixed. Um,
Sure. Yeah. And
but
that's a daily choice that we have to make, right?
yeah, and so like that whole musical actually came from a very dark moment. Another dark moment I had, but it wasn't my lowest moment. It was just a moment of weakness and relapse of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And there's oh, it's because the whole aspect of it is it actually gave me that because I'm making a meaning out of my suffering by sharing the suffering with others so they could not
Mm,
feel less alone. So I'm actually still I'm still doing that the message of I love everybody and that um like that's the whole aspect of being a symbol of redemption. Like that musical ended up becoming the piece of art that was actually created from all of my pain. And yeah.
that's so great.
What was the start of you finding your faith? And like how did that happen? And or
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home. My grandfather was a pastor. So my dad was a PK. pastor's kid. Um, and my grandfather's church was like apostolic, kind of like Pentecostal. Um, but my dad kind of bucked that and kind of went in a different route denominationally. So I grew up Baptist. So and I still I guess would consider myself a Baptist. Um, but grew up around it. So most of my earliest memories are from like growing up in church. Um, so I guess we lived in New Jersey, which is where I'm originally from, for the first like 4 years of my life. And those are where my earliest memories are from like the Second Baptist Church uh, in the town in southern New Jersey where we still live. Um, and then when we moved to Maryland, we got involved at a church out there, and I came to Christ at a pretty young age, right before my eighth birthday. So I kind of like knew or understood as much as I could at that time, the faith like a child thing. And I was baptized then. So I've had my ups and downs, and I've learned so much of how much that I don't know since then.
Yeah.
Because I guess now, if I think about it, what does that make that? It's been 28 years. Ugh, wow, I'm old. Um, so since then, so yeah, it's just been a great journey of kind of like learning about myself through learning about God, and kind of understanding just how much I don't have it, and how much more that we need God's grace, God's love, how much more we need to, you know, I guess embody that love to others around us as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
uh, so like my experience with it was because I was little, like I was baptized as a baby, so like
Mhm.
I never got to choose to be baptized at that time, and
Hmm.
then I was kind of thrust into a Cuban. Oh, they're actually it was a Spanish Lutheran church.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, like Luther, the German sect. This whole sect was Spanish, but they were the only Spanish church in the neighborhood. So my Cuban family all went there because they could actually um, understand.
Sure.
And they were still Catholic, but I didn't know what the hell was going on. I couldn't understand Bible verses in Spanish. I was so young.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't even do communion because they wanted you to read it in Spanish.
Mm.
And for one thing too, I struggle with a bad stutter because I learned Spanish and English at the same time. And then I get these words mixed up in my head, and I just like I could understand it, but I could not speak Spanish, and especially Bible Spanish because that was like completely different than like
Oh, I'm
Cuban.
sure. Yeah, were they
Yeah,
using like old translations and stuff too that weren't like modern language at all?
yeah. So
Yeah, I
I
would
didn't
imagine
know
so.
I don't know what was going on. I just know that I just had to do this because I was like living with my grandparents at the time,
Gotcha.
and and then like getting like being forced to do something like that and where you don't understand it. I had this whole refrain from religion for like a longest time.
Mhm.
Like the minute I had kind of like moved out from my grandparents' house, I like never went to church again for the longest time. Till I was what 24 might have been. And that was at that time that I was in like the darkest spot.
Mm.
And my aunt noticed that I was at a dark spot, took me to church, and I was also just to be alongside her because I hadn't really seen her and just needed family that wasn't um, impacting me negatively. So, and
Sure.
in that time, they had the pastor was like, "Does anyone here want to be saved from?" And like, I forget the exact one, but it's like where you raise your hand and you basically like, I want to
Oh
be
yeah, so
saved.
they basically did like an altar call is what they call it. Yeah.
Altar call. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like they call themselves Christian, but they're more evangelical than in a
Okay.
way. Um, and yeah, I stood up and then like just uh, yeah, and I was like bawling in tears that whole time too because the way that people were just like, we support you and we understand. Like everyone was coming up saying how powerful it was that I stood up and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
then the next week I went and um this was like right at the height of the not last election, the election before. And I found out that most of them were um, supporters of Trump.
Hmm.
I'll just say it.
That's hard to
And
navigate.
it was just like, do you guys not believe your own? You guys not practice what you're preaching? And even my aunt and uncle were, and then we got in this giant fight because I'm like, do you don't think I should have health care? You don't think I should, like
Yeah.
and it really tore my whole like building up to this faith, feeling like I had a congregation in this community, just to find out that the things that they are preaching they don't believe, or like
Hmm.
they're not practicing. So that it made it like a very like fake place to be at. And like I don't know how I could go back to the place and listen to them speak about loving everybody while they're voting for someone who hates a lot of people. um
Yeah, it is it's difficult. It's a difficult thing to navigate. We can I would love to go on that tangent.
yeah, so I just stopped going with them, and then ended up having a falling out with my aunt and uncle too, and they were my
Mm.
godparents too. Like that was another
Wow.
thing too. Like yes, it took us like a good 8 years, I guess.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
we we
That's hard.
we just reconnected this year.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was also me finding patience into just like not not treating someone's politics as their person, but
Hmm.
the big thing was it was the religion aspect that made me feel like,
Right.
because they're not practicing what they preach. And so then I was just reading the Bible on my own time, and that's when all of my light happened and that divine intervention. And then I was so, because I actually I transcribed the Bible, well at least the New Testament, in my
Hmm.
own words. Like I was really going on this whole process of trying to teach myself how to learn again.
Hmm.
I wasn't didn't know that's what I was doing, but it actually is what taught me that I could go back to college, is because I was able to learn, and I used the New Testament to do it, where I was just transcribing every line into my own poetic interpretations and how I was getting wisdom from it. So yes, it's my interpretations of it, and I've had some battles with some people before who I like, oh, this is how I interpret it, and they're like, no, it's not how you're supposed to interpret it. But and then I was so enthralled with it that I did start taking like I was a religious studies minor.
Okay. That's
Um
awesome.
and then I started learning about all religions and just like how they all connected and everyone's trying to say the same thing: peace, love, and understanding and patience. And
I guess the hard thing to navigate is kind of what you experienced, right? Is coming together with people and having community with people who don't think the same way that you do about certain things. And I think what you mentioned was really important. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story. I know I just like quoted the title of your show, but in seriousness, thank you for sharing that because that is important. That people acknowledge that that's not a unique experience, and that's something that a lot of us go through. And folks that are especially in these evangelical communities will likely experience that because for whatever reason, and I don't know all of the history behind it, but for whatever reason, a lot of conservative communities will um, basically say, this party is the party that has my interest in mind, and I will vote for them regardless of whether their values actually align with mine. So the evidence can be staring them in the face, but because they've been brought up to believe that, you know, this is the party of, um, my faith. This is the party that will protect the things that I care about. And a lot of times, those folks only have like one or two things that they're really concerned about.
Yeah.
And so, and what ends up happening is they'll vote based on that one emotion in spite of all of the other consequences because none of those things are really being talked about like that one issue that they care about.
Yeah.
So um, all I can do and all I try to do in those situations is just to say, hey, have you thought about? So I'll ask the things that they might be voting against that might personally affect me, and say, hey, have you thought about this? And sometimes the folks are ready for that conversation. And, it's a good litmus test by asking the question rather than just saying, why don't you care about me or something like that? Because immediately what that sounds like is, I'm ready to start a fight. And, the main thing that you were talking about earlier is so important, is promoting unity. You know, the the thing that makes our faith look so difficult to believe um, in the world today is exactly what you experienced. And I can reference that Jesus Freak album that I was talking about. The fourth track on that album, there's a song called "What If I Stumble," and it starts off with this quote, and I cannot remember the guy's name, but I'll look it up and I'll share it with you. But it says the greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who make or who will acknowledge Jesus with their lips, but then go out the door and go on about their lifestyle. And they say that that is what an unbelieving world finds unbelievable. So they say Jesus, but they don't act Jesus. Is the long and short of it. Um, and voting in this past election is one of those ways.
Yeah.
So they know who Jesus is, right?
Yeah.
They've heard about him at the very least. They may not know who Jesus is, but they may have heard about him and know what he stands for. And then they see the people that profess him and they're like, oh, well, these couldn't be more different. Why would if following this guy makes me end up looking like this, what would I be doing following him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So um it's hard. It
I
is hard to navigate.
yeah, because like that was like one of the biggest things that I gained from just even studying the New Testament and stuff is Jesus was a hero. He was an inspiring person who like everything he was doing was out of love. Um and like the aspect of oh, you just mentioned it. Oh yeah, because I was like living like my life is like what Jesus would do,
Hmm.
which the whole, what Jesus would do. Um
Absolutely. And the hard thing too is recognizing that what we see in our church communities is not Jesus, but what we see is a bunch of imperfect people trying to figure out how to be like Jesus in at different stages of their journeys, at different stages of understanding of what that even means. And everybody's shooting for an ideal that none of us can live up to. So you might see somebody who you think is a really good example, but that really good example is also a flawed human being that is not perfect, that also falls short of God's glory, that also has their own internal and external struggles, whatever they may be. They may look a certain way, but at the end of the day, they're not perfect either. So if we look to a person as our example, they are eventually going to let us down.
yeah.
And that's actually something that's in one of the songs that is forthcoming on my new album, that talks about that, because I was actually in a relationship that was like that, where the person I was in a relationship basically put me on a pedestal. And I had had a conversation with her and basically said, "Hey, you know, I am not perfect and I'm going to let you down. Please don't put a crown on my head. That's not where that belongs."
Yeah.
Um, so, and it was hard to navigate that because she didn't really understand, and she was trying to navigate that and figure that out, but she didn't really quite get it. Yeah, that was kind of where that came from. But the same thing in all of our lives. If we look to a person as an example instead of just reading scripture like you're doing, and understanding who Jesus is, if we're shooting for that target, we may not hit it, but we'll get closer than if we follow a person.
Yeah. Yeah, like that, because that was another thing that I kind of just interpreted from it too, is that like there's no way I'm ever gonna be perfect.
Hmm.
I made all these mistakes, but I could try to do my best to redeem those mistakes and make myself someone closer to someone like Jesus um,
And that's
who,
what we should all be working toward, but also recognizing that we're all on that journey. And
yeah,
as long as we're alive, we're not ever going to quite get there. And understanding the grace that it takes to get there, a grace for ourselves, and grace for others also. And sometimes that's really hard
yeah,
when folks make decisions that we don't agree with, um, when those decisions impact people that we care about. Um, it is difficult, but it is also what we're called to do.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't hold any hate towards any of that congregation, and just like
Hmm.
because I mean, even the pastor was preaching Trump.
Oh, that's hard.
And
That
but
does not belong on the pulpit.
yeah, but like how you said, is because they think that that political side is the party of God,
Yep,
and
they do.
and then they call us all demons, and they call yeah they constantly they're calling everyone that we look up to evil, and like yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it's
like
hard because, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, because we'll look at them like y'all are voting for evil stuff and doing these things, but we're not calling them demons and evil people. I mean, we might call them Nazis, but that's because they're acting like Nazis.
True, true. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's hard because it divides us.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is just exactly what what makes Christianity so hard to follow. In the world today is how divided we are,
Yeah.
and how we're willing to be like a little boys club of some kind, and say to heck with everybody else. That's so contrary
Yeah.
to what we're supposed to be saying and what we're supposed to be doing.
It's like how easy we become cult members.
Yeah, it's almost like we find ourselves identifying more with the Pharisees that Jesus criticized than Jesus himself.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I know you talked earlier about doing something in spite of someone saying you can't do something. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
that's where the name carpal tunnel comes in. It's because
Oh, nice.
my doctor told me I would never be able to learn guitar because I was diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome.
Mm.
Um, and this all was happening that same year too, and I was trying to learn it and everything, and I was having all these like pains in my wrists, and I
Uh,
I didn't know exactly how to play. Because I had a really heavy guitar. I actually sent you the picture because you actually did the show me
oh
your
yeah, the
guitar,
show me your guitar.
the slammer hammer. It's like I don't know, like 15 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, those hurt.
I didn't know because I was holding it with my wrist, and
Oh, that
like
that makes it worse. Yeah.
I because I didn't know, I didn't have any training and stuff, but so like
Sure.
going in with like these wrist pains where I could barely like move my head, they were like, yeah, you have carpal tunnel syndrome and you will you need to stop learning guitar. And I was didn't listen to them, and I was in spite of that, that's when I kept trying, and when I finally did learn it, there's also the double meaning of like how the carpool lane is supposed to be made to save the world from emissions.
Hmm.
Carpool tonal is tonal music made to save the world from,
Wow, that's really cool. I like that.
yeah. Also, I named it tonal too because there's a disco band from the 80s that is carpool tunnel. But yeah,
That's even better because yours has a deeper meaning.
yeah, it's and that's why I had to keep it. I didn't even try to change. I had to just find a different way to say it because of the meaning of me overcoming something that I was told I couldn't do. Like it's
Yeah,
yes.
that's a cool way to memorialize that forever.
In spite of that doctor.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, when you said that earlier, how you were like did something in spite of some to
Yeah.
show them that they were wrong.
Yeah. That was my first experience with being told, "Hey, you kind of suck. You need to get better." Um but it pushed me. It was the kick in the pants I needed. So I get it. And sometimes, somebody telling you no despite the fact that you have the desire, um, can push you in the right direction, can push you in the direction that leads you to learning tenacity, right?
Yeah.
Because uh, of all of the musical training and stuff that I have no training on my voice at all. Um, so it was literally just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of me just singing in my car, singing in my parents' house when I was growing up, all of that. And they hated that. As I was trying to figure all that stuff out, they knew I was bad too. They just didn't ever tell me. They just told me to be quiet at certain hours of day. Um, but it shows us that even when somebody doesn't believe in us, if we believe in ourselves, we can still achieve something great.
And
And
I was using that everything's Bill Cage, just gotta believe in yourself. That was the
yeah,
message.
yeah, and you are literally living proof now.
I am, yeah. And I know it feels cocky to say, but yeah, I
Own it. It's
own it.
real.
I got a music degree after that.
Yeah, man.
Did a grunge musical where I performed and all the music for it, recorded it. Like like that whole journey of like even just with after sports, I didn't think I could learn anything new. I thought this was all I was, so I had to go
Mm,
back into the workforce and just be retail or anything. I didn't think I had any other opportunities to try to bring my family out of poverty, which is like one of my biggest drives is to raise the family, like because I am the golden child. I'm the only one who graduated high school and only one who
wow.
went to college, and it's because my mom living up in Virginia, she ended up
Mhm.
becoming a roadie and just traveling with bands out of like no before she graduated high school. Like that was just the one thing that it was an opportunity, and she loved music. Like all of these shirts behind me, these are all
Mhm.
from different uh concerts that she got
Oh,
to
wow.
roadie. Yeah, Prince, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. She got to do a couple of Fleetwood Mac.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then my dad was a Cuban refugee, so he had to like he had to work as he came here as he was like 12.
Wow.
So he had to work instead of going to school, he had to work. And so but they did all they can to be able to give me the possibility to chase my dreams.
Yeah,
And
and look at what they achieved through you. Like what a crazy, amazing story. That's so cool.
yeah, it's
Way to go, mom and dad.
I'm not up to riches yet, so I owe them a lot. Like the whole joke is that I'm gonna buy them an island one day. Um, but it was never really a joke. It was like I'm gonna buy you an island one day. But yeah.
Well, make it happen, man. That's all I can say.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Keep doing what you're doing.
That's why I had to
And
chase big things like sports, music, and film.
there you go. Well, you've got it. And just keep doing the things that you're doing and keep making these genuine connections because
Yeah.
connection is how stuff like that happens, honestly. And in my experience, just being in the right place at the right time and being ready for it.
Yeah, community. I learned that when I did that whole guitar club for the performance club at Front Range.
Hmm.
That community was the thing that was raising me, and not only that, it was raising everyone around me. So like with a
Exactly.
community, everyone is growing together.
Just
And
like
yeah,
threads.
just like
There's
Threads.
there's the tie-in.
Threads is a good example of that. I hadn't really seen it socially. I've only seen it in smaller groups,
Hmm.
but we have a pretty big group on Threads that are like
We do.
that are all rising together and that care for one another and
Yeah, and it's genuine. And having people that are in your corner that celebrate when you celebrate and like celebrate your successes is so important too, and encouraging to help you keep going. So I think what we've got is valuable and special, and I'm grateful for it, and
yeah.
for so many reasons.
I I just wanted to add one more story before we switch off.
Yeah,
So
sure.
at Front Range or no, at CU Denver, the film school I went to,
Hmm.
I had been trying to find that type of community. Like there wasn't really any student organizations focused around collaboration and stuff. And like I couldn't find a band. I couldn't find people to play music with. I couldn't also being like the BIPOC students in the film school were
Hmm.
actually outcasted a bit because we came from different communities. Because most of the schools in Colorado that were high schools that actually had film programs in high school were the rich schools, the ones that yeah. So like a lot of the students there didn't have to take out financial aid and they didn't have to worry about buying cameras or anything. Like they had their own
Sure.
gear where the BIPOC students weren't. And I saw that need, so I created the first BIPOC student organization for the arts there. Um,
That's
we
awesome.
we were called PACA, the People of Color Creative Alliance, and that like I got to leave this legacy there of community because I noticed it within the music program and the film program, but within like we also had digital arts and um, animation. Like those are two different.
Hmm.
I didn't know that they were struggling with that too, but when I created this program for just all of our students, and it was all just to facilitate a collaboration where, film students could do music videos for the
Sure.
music students, and then, art students could make movie posters and, like everything they need there. And then the animation students could work with the film students because we were in two different like schools
Hmm.
in the College of Arts.
So you broke down the silos.
I, and then I connected all these people who didn't have community, and
Wow.
and they were all the people that were the outcasted BIPOC students. And we weren't just only BIPOC. The big thing about it was like if you want to support diverse creative voices, um, join this program. And we're just here to support one another. And also might be another um, beginning to this is because I would open up these spaces in it where everyone would just share a story of a struggle that they had being who they were, and we'd go around the room. Everyone would feel more, like they're not alone and reassured with their own problems, and everyone would also be able to finally tell someone this stuff, and like that all led to like we had like a final showcase recital thing, and
Hmm.
we had all these other people from other colleges come in to watch it. So or the other colleges at the university, and they got validation from audience members who don't really who weren't part of all this whole club or the student organization.
That's so great.
Yeah. And then yeah, it continued on this year because this was just last year that I started that. So
Right on.
I just want to add that on because of the fact that the community of that was it was so needed. And I
Hmm.
needed it all 4 years. I was there before that last semester that I started it.
Yeah, but good on you for seeing the need and doing something that was kind of selfless in a way because you were on your way out,
Yeah.
but you recognized that there were other people like you who were going through the same thing, and you basically helped provide a resource for them. So that is huge. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, you're the first person on Threads I've told that to too, because I just
Wow.
it just hasn't really came up. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm an odd bird myself because I'm mixed. So I come from um having not found a space for myself when I was younger. I'm mostly black and white, so it's one of those things where it was like wasn't black enough for the black kids, I wasn't white enough for the white kids, kind of thing. So I ended up falling in with like the nerdy outcast kids as I was growing up. I didn't really find my space until much later on. Um, but it was interesting trying to navigate that because I'm not half and half either. I'm actually more black than I am anything else. Because my mom was mixed. My dad is black. So it was just this weird thing. And obviously, I grew up in the suburbs, so I don't like have the whole um like hood attitude or anything like that. So definitely didn't really fall in all of that kind of community either. Um, so it was just interesting. So it's cool to hear that somebody else was like going through and like figuring out ways to like make space. And you did something that I was not able to do. You actually like created a community and you left a legacy, which is awesome.
which so I'm mixed. I'm half Scottish, half Cuban.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
I dealt with the same stuff. I was too white for the brown people, and I was too brown for the white people. So I the only people I could find were the outcasts and nerds. So like I was always part of I say nerds because I'm a nerd. Didn't mean
Sure.
it like that, but
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
so like
same.
poke Pokemon crowds, the
Yeah.
whole
Video games, all that
video
stuff.
games and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And uh I like I grew up in a suburb of Denver, but we were a very minority part of Denver. So
Hmm.
it was still ghetto and like the only community and stuff that around me, like the kids I grew up with, like they were all brown kids too, but they
Hmm.
went towards gangs. So like I literally had that like I either go gang to be community or be outcasted. And
Sure.
I did a bit of both just trying to find community. And I mean at the end of the day I know that it was not um right, but it was the circumstance I was in to actually be accepted by somebody
Sure. Yeah.
to
That
follow that.
happens to so many of us.
But yeah, the whole mixed aspect of and like not being accepted by people of your own
Hmm.
race, that led me to it's like so much different type of like imposter syndrome and doubt or like feeling like I didn't belong. But
Yeah. It took
I
me a long time to figure out all that kind of stuff out. Yeah. Just like what you were talking about with your community, now we have an opportunity to use our voices to speak and help those that have come after us to have better lives. So I
yeah.
would love to be more part of those kinds of conversations because I think that's important. And it's something that I wish I had growing up.
With Paka and stuff, because I was the creator and president,
Hmm.
I was mixed. So even having that, I had a lot of self-doubt of like of doing this because the year prior when I was doing my senior thesis film, um, I did it about my Cuban family and just like my it's basically my experience with my dad growing up with
Mm,
a Santeria priestess mother and how she kind of like kept it from him. But I also made it where my dad was mixed and he's just like questioning his place in society because he's getting treated like he's a criminal and stuff when he's just like a student just living his life. Um,
mhm,
I had to fight to direct my own script because like I was the only script that another person pitched themselves to direct. So then
mhm,
there was this whole process of me and him having to like debate with the professor of who gets to direct the script. And his whole thing was he was like, I am 100% brown. I should tell this story because in the script, the kid prays to God and he's like, why did you make me brown when you know I was gonna be hurt so much in this world? Like,
mm.
and he didn't think I should direct it because I wasn't 100% brown. And that whole aspect had me like just it
So hurtful.
and it just reappeared because I hadn't really felt that, especially in that community of the film students where there was only like four brown kids
Yeah, man,
being
that breaks
told
my heart for you.
yeah, being told I wasn't brown because I didn't I'm not I can speak Spanish but I'm not I'm not like fluent but
Hmm.
but that also had to deal with it because I actually wrote the dialogue. It's like Cuban dialogue, so it's a lot of
Hmm.
slang Spanish, and he was trying to say that this isn't Spanish. Just like things
Mm.
like that. That was just like,
When in fact that was probably more authentic than what he could do.
yeah, the
Yeah. So yeah, it's same thing on my end, growing up and people telling me why you act so white and why you do that with your hair and all of that kind of stuff. It's like the thing is with my natural hair, it's not just like normal black hair either. So I have like mixed boy hair. So um my hair actually looks a lot like yours.
like mine,
Yeah.
curly.
Yep.
See if I can show it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just ridiculous and unmanageable. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this. And I like the way it looks. So that was just my style. That was the decision I made. And I was like, I'm going to own it. And that doesn't make me less black. Right. Um, but to others, it did. There are, certain, uh, I guess, stereotypes that black people like to project upon themselves also, for whatever reason. And some of them I didn't 100% agree with, and I wanted to buck. And I don't know why that was. Maybe it was just the fact that I am light skinned already. And there's even for people that are totally black that have light skin like mine, there's also a thing in the black community about that too.
Oh yeah.
So I was like getting a double whammy. Um, so it's just interesting, kind of like growing up and feeling like even though this is for me most of what my ethnic identity is, um, I feel like I'm not really, you know. So it was tough, but now I've kind of figured out that I I'm the one that defines that, not anyone else. And I know where I come from. I know what my background is, and that's at the end of the day all that matters. Um, so people can have a conversation with me about it, or they can just look at me and be like, "What are you?" And that's fine.
So,
Most of the time, I'll answer them kind of jokingly. I'm a human,
yeah.
just because I would rather not talk about that, honestly.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and it's what people see. And sometimes folks don't have that kind of cultural lens to understand that, hey, maybe that's not the conversation that this person wants to have at this very moment in time.
So in high school, I literally went by the name Cuban. So that's what was my nickname
Hmm.
because in that high school, it was a pretty ghetto high school. That was like the way to define myself as being brown.
Mm.
Um, and at that time too, I was dealing with like I had dealt with my first racism you know, act of violence upon me. And I so I went by that so people only saw me as Cuban, and so I could have a bit more strength. I actually put on a mask for it, so I was like hiding my Scottish side and everything.
Hmm.
But yeah, that like literally it's on my Letterman jacket on the back instead of my last name, it just says Cuban.
Mm.
But it was the way for me to just try to fit in to the community.
Growing up, kids are racist. Like, people are, and I think they don't recognize the gravity of the words that they use. Um, and this is actually kind of a good segue into a question that I wanted to ask you, kind of about the whole like being a mixed guy kind of thing. Um, how white passing um puts you in certain situations too, right? So just the number of like microaggressions that I've received. Because there are some people who just look at me and they think, oh, that guy's just really tan, right? So, um, the things that I would hear about people of my race said to me, thinking that they were talking to just
Oh,
some white dude. Um, have you ever had any experiences like that?
in a way, people always knew I was brown because I always had like this mustache and the hair itself. Um,
Hmm.
so I mean, I've had blatant shit that was said about me. Like the first time I
Hmm.
got pulled over by a cop, the cop told me that he saw a beaner driving a nice Cadillac, so he thought I stole it. And
Wow.
and the fact that I didn't, he was just like, "You're free to go." And I was just like, "Thank you." I thanked him.
Good grief.
But at that time, like I was just like, "Thank
Yeah,
you
that
for
stuff
not."
hits you and you just don't process it, right? It's like,
Yeah,
wow, that was really awful.
it's really racist, but thank you. So
Yeah,
like I've had those experiences and like I've had experiences where I've gotten um some sort of random act of violence upon me and then I would think that it was because of my race. Yeah, I got my teeth knocked out by three white people walking down the street and they had like a bat.
wow.
And I was always kind of like taught to like you don't make eye contact with them because it's gonna put you in danger. So I was just
Hmm.
looking down while I was
Hmm.
crossing their path, and then I just got hit with something metal. I think it was either a bat or a lead pipe. It was something metal,
Wow, man, I'm
and
sorry.
I ended up just taking off running. But I have that because of my past experiences. I don't know if it was because of my race or if it was just because I was just a random person walking down the street. The fact that
Sure.
they were three white guys made me feel like it was that. Um,
Yeah. I mean, to me, that sounds like racism, and that might just be my lens. But it it tracks,
and and I didn't stick around to find out what it was. And
right? Yeah, you don't ask the reason, you just get out of danger. That's absolutely the right thing to do. Yeah.
a lot of people don't know how I fell, but it had to do with just straight adrenaline and just like
Mm,
being unaware when I just got hit. I just started running.
I get
Yeah.
it. Yeah, man, I'm sorry that happened.
I did learn later on though in life that there's a different mask I could wear that is actually more of me. Like by wearing Marvel shirts and being like more nerdy and just I'm more safer on the streets from cops.
Sure.
And ever since I kind of adopted that type of who I would want to be back in the past because I'm a big comic book person, but I never felt like I could be like that in front of others, and actually, at least in Thornton. So
Hmm.
when I finally kind of went out into like Denver and stuff, or even just other parts of Thornton, I like later on in life, I would literally dress with like I have four different Deadpool shirts where he's riding a unicorn with a rainbow. Um, and I would wear those all the time because I never was really seen as a threat to police officers, but also a threat to other people. The microaggressions, like you're talking about, like at a
Yeah.
store, where because that was a big part of this. that script too. Is like, you walk in a store and then there's a person following you because they think you're
Oh
gonna
yeah,
steal. Uh,
that's real. That happens to me
and
all the time. Excuse me, sir, can I help you? Can I help you find something? Are you doing all right? Yeah, all of that. Hate it.
and and then there's the people who will like step beside you while you're walking on the street with them, or like, and then it makes
Yeah.
you feel like I don't want to make this person feel uncomfortable, so you cross the street to walk
I
around
I
them.
totally do that same thing. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Like I don't think I really got them from the brown community that wasn't really accepting me. They weren't like giving me microaggressions. They were just like not accepting me. So like,
Yeah, yeah. On that side of things, it's definitely way more overt than it is covert.
yeah.
But yeah, for me, for like white people, just because of how I am, you know, I would hear stuff and I'd be like, "Don't you know who I am? Don't you look at my nose, man?" Like, but yeah, I would say definitely more overt in the black community for sure.
I,
Saying kids would literally call me Michael. Think of it that way.
oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say one of the things that has happened because I do kind of have a bit more of a, I don't know, what would you say, a thug personality, but it's not a personality, it's just where I was raised at. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of my homies were black, and like they did not want me to say I was black, even though my grandfather was.
Hmm.
I come from a Cuban family that is half Afro-Cuban and then half
Hmm.
Spanish-Cuban, and like they hated that when I would say that, even though like I am my grandfather was black,
Yep.
and I just like them not even they'd rather me act like I was brown or white.
And for me, it was that I didn't act enough. So, but yeah, it's interesting, like for specifically for black men too. It's really prevalent that they're like really strong into that identity. Um, at least it was for me, like growing up, and it still happens to me occasionally. I remember a couple years ago, I was this was when I was working at the church that was in Maryland. I went to a restaurant with two of my coworkers who were both other black men, and we had just like gone to like have a conversation and hang out after I think it was after rehearsal, so it was like kind of late at night,
Yeah.
and we went to this like pub, and as we were leaving, another black guy was like standing at the door. He was definitely inebriated, um, but as we were walking out, I was like last in line or whatever, and he like stopped and like dapped the other guys up, and then wouldn't dap me and told me to brush the other guy's shoulders off because he was like, "Oh, it's good to see brothers in here." I was like, "Man, look at my face. Don't look at my hair. Look at my face." But it's one of those things. It's like little things, and that was a microaggression that he didn't know.
Yeah.
But stuff like that when I was younger would make me like question my identity. Now I know who I am. It doesn't matter. But stuff like that, especially with black men, was a thing.
You ever get when a white person saying hi to everybody and they're like, hello, 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 and they're like, what up, dog?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I've gotten that a
Yeah.
lot too from
Running gag. Yeah. Does the handshake start like this or does it start like this? Yeah. Absolutely.
I did want to give you some space to talk about um the World's Health Kitchen,
Oh, World Central Kitchen. Yeah.
World
I
Central Kitchen.
yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. So thank you, first of all, for making space for me to talk about that. So um that's just something that's been kind of near and dear to my heart for a little while. Over the I guess this is the third year I want to say that I've been doing this. Um, I've just kind of felt a heart for wanting to make a bigger difference with the platform that I've been blessed with because I have, you know, a reasonable amount of connections now, and I want to use that for doing good in the world. And I've tried my hand at doing other little things in the past. Excuse me, making like small differences to individuals and things like that. But I wanted to do something greater. And, as I was doing research, I kind of like went down this rabbit hole because I started like looking up charities. And then I kept getting discouraged because when I was doing research, I was looking things up and seeing, oh, well, you have to be careful about what charity you donate to because some of those charities, they don't really put all of the money that you donate to them toward the cause that they say they're for. So, like, one of the famous ones is like the Susan Komen Foundation doesn't really forward all of their funds to breast cancer research. So I was like, okay, well, how do I find like the standard or whatever for how you rate these things? Is there a Better Business Bureau for nonprofits, for charities? And there was. And um, one of the first ones that came up was World Central Kitchen, and I was thinking about trying to feed people specifically because when I was looking into doing this, it was like the Thanksgiving season. So I was like, Thanksgiving in America is all about gluttony and like eating as much as you can, and food getting wasted and all that stuff. And I was like, how quintessentially American, first of all, and how wasteful we're being with the privilege and the influence that we could have. Um, so I was like, well, I can't do anything about the culture, but what I can do is try to make a difference in the circle that I do have. So I looked up World Central Kitchen and I was like, okay, well, these guys have like 100% on the rating scale from this place, and they really seem like they're in the trenches doing the thing, helping people in crisis specifically. So folks that are really in need are getting fed. So I was like, okay, well, this is going to be the thing. And the first year I did it, um, didn't raise a whole lot of money. It was like $126 or something, but you know, every little bit counts. And I
Yeah.
figured, you know, maybe $126 a year it adds up, right? You think of that like fable or story that they used to tell kids about the kid throwing seashells back into the ocean or whatever made a difference to that one or something like that. I'm butchering that, I'm sure. But like just thinking of being able to make just a small difference, and then the next year I did it. I raised like almost $800. So it was a ton. For a small guy like me, I don't have a huge platform, but enough of an impact to say, hey, wow, we got almost to $1,000 within 2 years. And now on this time around, we're on track to make it to $2,000 of lifetime donations, which is awesome. So yeah, the thing that was attractive to me specifically about World Central Kitchen was not only that they were like committed to feeding people, but that they were committed to going where people
Yeah.
wouldn't go, um, and not doing the popular thing, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the big things that they're a part of making an impact in is in Gaza right now, and that's something that is heartbreaking to me, um, because in the United States, our tax dollars are responsible for so much of that pain, so much of that loss of human life, um, that's affecting literally the place that's supposed to be so dear to our hearts as Christians, for all of us that claim we're a Christian nation, right?
Yeah.
So my heart goes out to those people specifically, and as my heart has been breaking, this was a way for me to have a direct impact, for good, to use some of the money that I have, some of the money that I can direct toward combating all of the other stuff that's going on. So yeah, so that's
Yeah.
part of why World Central Kitchen's part
So,
of what I care about. So yeah.
um, the chef who runs it, I because I've been following him for a while. He always goes on like the Stephen
Yeah.
Colbert show and stuff.
Jose Andres. Yeah.
Jose Andres, because I was trying to
Yeah.
try to remember his name. Yeah, he's been doing some great work, and
Yeah. He and I share a birthday too, which is kind of cool.
that's cool. I share a birthday with Beyonce,
Ah, that's
so
that's that might
so
be cooler.
no, but no one celebrates my birthday because it's Beyonce's
Oh.
birthday. No, um, yeah, but yeah, like the work he's doing, I've admired that a lot. And then when I saw that you were a part of that too, I want to do anything I could to help. I don't have steady work, so I wasn't able to donate, but I was trying to do my best to just share it with, I mean, the platform I have. And
Yeah, man, every little bit counts, and just putting the word out there means the world, honestly. So getting it in front of as many people as possible is what it's all about. And even if I don't hit the $2,000 goal, we still raised a ton of money this time around, and it just makes room for next year, right?
yeah,
So what you've done is helped me to make it a little bit more in the public eye. And even if it doesn't necessarily come from, my campaign or whatever, maybe somebody will be convicted later on in the month of March or something to say, hey, I remember this charity. I want to, donate to World Central Kitchen. And there happens to be some other kind of crisis where somebody in need really needs help. So thank you for doing
yeah,
that.
yeah, no problem. Two questions. First is it's Jose Andres.
Yes.
Well, I guess that's the question, the statement. If if you don't know who that is, not you, but the people watching this, definitely go look up the work he's been doing this last. I mean, from what he was helping out with COVID, where he was making school
Yes.
lunches for people, and then helping out like hurricane, like was he in Puerto Rico doing helping out that hurricane?
Yep. And he's
Yeah,
got his folks in the United States now in North Carolina and in Florida from the hurricanes that happened earlier this year.
yeah,
I think they're in Spain, kind of responding to the flooding that was happening there. They're just all over. Anything that's going on the world stage, they're like frontline.
yeah. They're also in Ukraine too, right?
They
Yeah,
are, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, they're literally risking their own lives, and in some cases, some of them have lost their
yeah.
lives. So in Gaza, there were folks that actually were killed while they were in the field working. And even in spite of that, they built kitchens in honor of the folks that passed and are still there doing the work. So they really believe in what they're doing, and it's inspiring.
Yeah, it definitely is. They're saving life through food
Yeah,
and just when you see Jose speak about it and how passionate he is about just feeding people, um, like yeah, that he has always inspired me every time I always look forward to when he's on Colbert, and Colbert has given him that kind of medium and platform to come on like all the time and just um sometimes they'll just do little cooking shows for the people there, but yeah.
absolutely.
So the second one is tell people how or where to go to donate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I should probably do that. So there are a couple ways you can. You can either just send me a message on Instagram. So my Instagram is just at Jordan Coley. So JordanColey. You can also just go on my website. So again, my name, jordancoley.com/shop. Anything that you buy from there, and I can ship kind of worldwide. So my merch can go anywhere. So if you want to donate that way, any of the profits that I get from that goes directly toward World Central Kitchen until the 21st. And also Bandcamp as well. So if you go on my Bandcamp, so jordancoley.bandcamp.com, if you buy anything there, any of those profits also go to World Central Kitchen.
And that's a good way to do it too. So like because they're getting your merch, they're buying your songs,
Hmm.
and it's helping others. So like they get something. I'm sometimes that's a thing that some people don't donate for because they're like wanting something in return.
Yep,
If it whether it's a tax credit or
absolutely.
something. So yeah, you could get. get some beautiful music and donate to a good cause, and you could get some merch. I haven't seen your merch, but I'm now excited to see your merch. And
Yeah, check it out. And all of the stuff is really comfortable. I would wear it myself. And I actually do. I have a couple of test prints that I totally wear shamelessly wear my own merch.
I've still yet to get merch, but um, that'd be something that that'd be something that would connect to my heart if I did get merch. If all that money could go to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you need help setting that up, I'm happy to help you, man.
oh, yeah, definitely will take you up on that.
Yeah.
Um, kind of already plugged yourself, but what you got coming up next with your music?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm working on an album. I very briefly mentioned that a second ago. But yeah, it's 10 songs, so including the three singles that I have out that are full band on my Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal and all that fun stuff. Um, so there's seven more songs coming. I'm working with a very dear engineer friend of mine. His at on Threads is Engaging Humanity. So you can follow him as well. He's an awesome engineer, an awesome guy, and just really, really good at what he does. So if you like the production and stuff on my music, thank him because he's a wizard. Um, but yeah, seven more songs are on the way. Um, I don't write often about relationships. So the one song that I talked about was actually the only one that's about a romantic relationship. Everything else is about other kinds of relationships or about scripture or about navigating life. So kind of like that imposter syndrome thing that we were talking about earlier. I have a song about that. And everything that I write is designed to kind of make you think. So I don't usually go pretty shallow with my lyrics. I try to go deep. And the same thing with the production choices that I make. So, um, what I write and what I create, I want to encourage people to engage with it more than one time. Because, there are little details and things that you might not notice on the first listen through, especially with maybe the story that I'm writing or musical details that are inside of it, things like that. I try to keep it interesting so that it's worth more than one listen. So that's my style. That's my thing. If you like alt punk, alt rock, um, Paramore, Pierce the Veil, things like that, that's kind of my style. So I like to call myself Wish Vic Fuentes. So that's my thing.
Thank you everyone for joining, and this was a great conversation.
It
We'll,
was. Thank you so much again for having me. This was a tremendous
yeah,
blessing, man.
yeah. I mean, it's great having you too. And we will see you next time on Being Vulnerable.